it was always about the sound system, you know, the music, just to hear every instrument while the music was playing and the lyrics. It's just, the DJs would take me on a journey. However I came in there, when I left, I left like I just came out of the church, you know, and it was my sanctuary. And what I really loved about growing up in the club scene, because my generation, we grew up in the clubs. That was our extracurricular activities, to say the least. And what I really enjoyed about that was that it was a safe haven for me, but also it was just about the music. The music, the camaraderie, and the dancing, and just the sense of having a sense of freedom. And mostly what I loved about it, it wasn't about a particular ethnic group. It was about everybody. We happened to be talking about sanctuary and relating it to LBGT, but when everybody was there. Right. All races, all colors, all ethnicities. I don't care what economic status you had. Everybody was in the club getting down, and that's what I really loved about it. And for me, being the last generation that really caught it, you know, I was a part of the last generation that caught it. And I'm close to 50, you know, kicking it through the doors. You know, that's what I try to bring to the Lincoln Park Music Festival, that experience, that authentic, organic experience. And for the people who, when we started House working with Shelton Hayes and others, really Lolita Holloway, bringing that back and giving you that authentic experience is really like grassroots experience. And for me, I enjoy doing it once a year. Once a year is enough for me because it's a lot of work, you know, to produce something like that. But I really enjoy it because when people come to Lincoln Park, we've had it for 9 years, and it's a sanctuary. It's a sanctuary. We have had no incidents at Lincoln Park because it's like being in the club and everyone governs themselves. It's the same experience that we're creating there.
Yeah. I wanted, there's so many ways I could take this, but I'm gonna continue in this train of thought. For those of you who came a little later, we had a short about a young female MC, Saya, which on its surface it's like, okay, young female MC, what's this about? However, you may or may not watch reality TV, but Saya is a cast member of Sisterhood of Hip Hop, which was on Oxygen. And on the show, she says, I'm the first openly gay female MC. And the short that we saw, Laura, that you actually directed, was shot before all the reality show fame. I want to know, it's kind of two parts, just touch on, you know, how did you come to find Saya? And then also, I want to bridge the gap kind of this evening, because my thing is, and why I thought these were great companion films, is for this generation today, where is their sanctuary? You know, where is that sanctuary for them, especially the hip hop generation, where she's from?
So I met Saya in 2007, and I was down by the Christopher Street Pier one night waiting in Manhattan, waiting to go out, just sitting on the steps, waiting for someone who was late, and this whole crew of girls were sitting with me, and we got to talking, and my background is as a journalist. They were all talking about Lil Wayne, who was their favorite rapper at the time, and I had just come from doing a big Vibe magazine cover story with him. And so Saya, being one of those girls, was like, you should do a story about me. And we exchanged phone numbers, and the next day she called and asked if her father could call me and invite me to a ball. And I said, sure. And then a little while later, a lady named Vito called, who was the father of a house based in Brooklyn at the time called House of Corleone. And Vito called, and she told me a little bit about the house and invited me to come to a ball that was happening in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, where Saya would be performing. And so I went, and I guess that house just really wanted to share their story and opened up their family to me and their meetings, and I started following them. And the house soon, I don't know if it disbanded completely, but it soon became apparent to me that it wasn't about that house, but was more about focusing on some of the young women in the house, one of whom was Saya. And so I started filming her and filmed her for about 3 years in Brooklyn, as well as when she relocated to Atlanta and then more recently to Los Angeles. And similar to what you were saying, you know, me not being around during that era and this all being an unfamiliar world to me at the time, I really felt like I had gone to church and just to a temple. It was like, it was pretty incredible, the sense of like release that was happening there. And what was interesting for this time was that I was with all women who hip hop was, you know, the music for them, and whom a lot of them were rappers or, you know, that's their self-expression. And so, I don't know if that answers.
Well, I mean, it kind of leads into the second part of my question, which was, as someone who's a journalist, you worked in hip hop magazines, urban media, you've covered artists like Lil Wayne, you're definitely familiar with, you know, the music and the culture from pop culture, from the, you know, writing about it and covering it. And so, you know, with that kind of insider view into, you know, living that whole 90s and the growth of you know, the explosion of it. I guess my point is, you know, Anthony said the music and the lyrics. Well, these kids today, especially if you're Saya, and number one, you grew up, this is what you grew up listening to, right? Clearly, it informs her everything, right? And so, not only does she listen to it, but she is now trying to be an MC. And I'm wondering, where is the sanctuary in the music for a Saya, for women in general, but then now you have Saya, who doesn't fit the stereotype of what a successful female MC looks like right now, and especially within the context of some of the lyrics and different things like that. She's invisible, has this little voice, you know, whereas they both touched on the music and how the music you grew up listening to, and you can go to the club and hear some interpretation of it and feel inclusive and free. And so I'm just curious.
Yeah, and I think if you guys saw the short film, it's something she touches upon a lot, that walking that line between wanting to stay true to herself and loving hip-hop, and hip-hop also being something that has a lot of misogyny and homophobia and so on. And so I think that she's sort of straddling those two worlds, and I just really applaud her for staying true to herself. And there's been so many times that she's been offered record deals and told if she dresses a little more feminine, or if she doesn't talk about being a lesbian, or so on. And, you know, she's a beautiful woman, and she's just stayed authentic to who she is, and it's now starting to really pay off for her. So, and she is on TV now, and
great.
She's not. She has a new girlfriend now.
Great for her.
Because I know it had to kill her when she had to get her hair straight.
Yes.
Great for her.
And so, in terms of, from an artist, you know, standpoint, from a personal standpoint, from, not sure, you know, tell me more about your personal experience as it relates to the music and just sanctuary music, finding sanctuary through art.
I love music. Again, I'm Haitian, so music is like part of the Haitian backbone. And there's always, when I was growing up, there wasn't that household where there are times where it's almost like it was second nature when things weren't going so well. And even when we had a lot of blackouts, there would always be a small radio with batteries to like at least play music and people would start dancing, just like get into the groove of it. Music is something that's, I guess, in that sense, if you want to call music being a sanctuary, because you're not really thinking, you're focusing either on the lyrics that's being said, and whenever that part comes around, you start singing with that part because you feel it, because you identify with that. or if there's like that certain bridge in the music where the beat is coming, you're like, oh shit, you get into it, you know, it's that, but I guess with me, growing up with music, and I used to go party, I don't do it as much as I do right now, but I used to go party, and in
Where?
Haiti there would be a lot of more like house parties, or basements or whatever, and you would have either people DJing, or sometimes I would go to live bands playing. Live band playing is more dominant, what we call compa music, or bop. So we'll go to these, and I would go to them a lot. And I would be one of those people, I didn't need a partner to go dance and